He flew 409 combat missions across 3 wars. More than 6,000 flight hours in a military that told him black men couldn't fly. This is the story of Brigadier General Charles McGee, a Tuskegee Airman who refused to quit. December 7, 1919, Cleveland, Ohio. Charles Edward McGee was born to Louis Allen McGee, a Methodist minister who had served as a chaplain in World War I. Charles' mother died shortly after giving birth to his sister. His father raised the family alone. They moved frequently, Illinois, West Virginia, Florida, wherever Louis McGee's ministry took them. Charles grew up in the Jim Crow South. Segregated schools, separate water fountains, back of the bus. But his father taught him a lesson he would never forget. Endure racism with quiet dignity. Never let it define you. Charles became an Eagle Scout. He worked for the Civilian Conservation Corps. In 1937, he enrolled at the University of Illinois to study engineering. He joined the Pershing Rifles ROTC program and became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Life was good. Charles had a future. Then came December 7th, 1941, his 22nd birthday. Pearl Harbor. Charles wanted to serve, but the United States military had a problem with that. The Army Air Corps didn't allow black pilots. A 1925 Army War College study had concluded that black people lacked the intelligence, courage, and skill to operate complex machinery like aircraft. It was racist pseudoscience, but it was official military policy. Pressure from civil rights groups and Eleanor Roosevelt forced the military to change. In 1941, the Army Air Corps announced an experimental program. They would train black pilots at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, deep in the heart of Jim Crow country. The military brass expected it to fail. They would prove that black men couldn't fly combat aircraft, and the issue would be settled forever. On October 26, 1942, Charles McGee enlisted in the United States Army. He left the University of Illinois as a sophomore. His college degree would have to wait. On June 30th, 1943, Charles graduated from flight training. Class Sichersen F. He received his silver pilot's wings and his commission as a second lieutenant. Charles was assigned to the 302nd Fighter Squadron, 332nd Fighter Group, the Tuskegee Airmen. By February 1944, Charles was in Italy. On Valentine's Day, he flew his first combat mission, escorting B-24 Liberator bombers over Germany. The 332nd flew P-39 Airacobras at first. Then they upgraded to P-47 Thunderbolts. Finally, in July 1944, they got P-51 Mustangs, the best fighter plane in the war. The Tuskegee Airmen painted the tails of their aircraft red. For identification, Allied bomber crews started calling them the Red Tails, and they started requesting them specifically, because the Red Tails never left you. Charles named his P-51 Kitten, partially after his wife Frances, whom he called Kitten, and partially because his crew chief kept that engine purring like a kitten. August 24th, 1944. Charles was flying escort over Czechoslovakia, protecting a formation of B-24 bombers. German fighters dove out of the sun. Focke-Wulf, Egelingas. Charles broke formation and engaged. He chased one FW-190 into a steep dive, both aircraft screaming toward the ground. Charles lined up his shot and fired. The German fighter exploded. Charles pulled up just in time. The bombers made it home. By December 1944, Charles had flown 136 combat missions. He was rotated back to the United States. He became an instructor at Tuskegee, training B-25 Mitchell bomber crews for the 477th Bombardment Group. The war ended in 1945. Charles McGee could have gone home, finished his degree, become an engineer. But he'd fallen in love with flying. He stayed in the military. In 1948, President Truman signed Executive Order 9981, integrating the United States Armed Forces. The success of the Tuskegee Airmen had proven that black service members could excel. The experiment had succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. June 25, 1950. North Korea invaded South Korea. The United States responded. Captain Charles McGee was deployed to Korea with the 67th Fighter Bomber Squadron, flying P-51 Mustangs again. For 15 months, Charles flew combat missions: ground attack, close air support, interdiction. When he returned to the United States, he'd flown another 100 combat missions. He was promoted to major. Charles continued to rise through the ranks. Assignments in the United States, Italy, West Germany. Leading squadrons, training pilots. And then came Vietnam. Lieutenant Colonel Charles McGee was assigned to the 16th Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron, flying the RF-4 Phantom, a jet reconnaissance aircraft. with a white officer in his back seat. From flying in segregated units in World War II to flying integrated missions in Vietnam, Charles had witnessed the entire transformation. For 12 months, he flew reconnaissance missions over North Vietnam, photographing enemy positions, dodging surface-to-air missiles, evading MiG fighters. He flew 172 combat missions in Vietnam, bringing his three-war total to 409 missions, one of the highest combat totals by any fighter pilot in American history. January 31st, 1973. Colonel Charles McGee retired from the United States Air Force. 30 years of service. 6308flying hours. 409 combat missions. 3 distinguished flying crosses. 2 Legion of Merit medals. A Bronze Star. And Tuskegee Air medals. But Charles wasn't done yet. In 1978, at age 58, Charles returned to Columbia College and completed the degree he'd started 36 years earlier. Education had been interrupted by World War II, but it was never forgotten. Charles became the director of Kansas City Airport. He served on aviation boards and commissions, and for over 30 years, he became an ambassador for Tuskegee Airmen, Inc., traveling the country, speaking to schools, museums, veterans groups, sharing his story. His mantra was simple: perceive, prepare, perform, persevere. March 29, 2007. The Rotunda of the United States Capitol. President George W. Bush presented the Congressional Gold Medal to the surviving Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's highest civilian honor. Charles McGee stood among his brothers, the men who had broken barriers, who had proven what was possible. December 7th, 2019. Charles McGee's 100th birthday. He's celebrated by flying a Cirrus Vision Jet and a Cessna Citation M2. At 100 years old, he was still at the controls. February 4th, 2020. The State of the Union Address. President Donald Trump honored Charles McGee and announced his promotion to Brigadier General at age 100. The chamber erupted in a standing ovation. Charles McGee stood and saluted, tears streaming down his face. January 16th, 2022. Brigadier General Charles Edward McGee died peacefully at his home in Bethesda, Maryland. He was 102 years old. He was the last living Tuskegee Airman of his generation. This is what heroism looks like. Not the kind that quits when the mission is done, but the kind that keeps serving. Charles McGee could have left the military after World War II, but he loved flying. So he stayed. Through Korea, through Vietnam, 30 years of service. He could have gone home after retirement, but he became an ambassador, traveling the country, sharing his story with children, inspiring the next generation. He was told black men couldn't fly. He flew 409 combat missions across 3 wars. And at age 100, he was still flying. Charles McGee's life was a testament to what perseverance can achieve. Perceive, prepare, perform, persevere. If you want to hear more stories of American heroes who refused to be limited by what others said was impossible, hit subscribe. These men deserve to be remembered.